President Trump promoted his tax plan in Pennsylvania Wednesday and said American families could see their incomes go up by $4,000 if it goes into effect.
We're going to fight, and we're going to get those Republicans and maybe a few of those Democrats to raise their hand, and you're going to have so much money to spend in this wonderful country and this great economy. That is why we've proposed tax cuts that are pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker, pro-family, and pro-American.
The president had a busy Wednesday. He met with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about NAFTA after lashing out on Twitter about what he calls fake news. The news he's talking about is an NBC report that Mr. Trump told top defense officials he wanted, quote, a nearly tenfold increase in the U.S. nuclear arsenal. The president said this was pure fiction made up to demean. CBSN political contributor and Time White House correspondent Zeke Miller is in Washington. So, Zeke, in the Oval Office Wednesday, the president said we won't need an increase of our nuclear arsenal. In December, the president tweeted, quote, the United States must greatly strengthen and expand its nuclear capability until such time as the world comes to its senses regarding nukes. So, Zeke, has the president's view changed since he entered office?
It's really hard to say there. Certainly, we've seen a lot of bluster from the president when it comes to nuclear weapons, in the case of that tweet, in the case of some of the other public statements, and bluster in terms of, general foreign policy, the fire and brimstone rhetoric with regard to North Korea at times as well. So, has his position changed? If you take that tweet maybe on a technical level, yes, but certainly the fact that the president did reportedly go talk to his advisors and sort of even ask the question, why can't we increase our nuclear arsenal by that amount, by a factor of 10, really does sort of indicate raise questions about his understanding of the nuclear arsenal, what it's capable of, what it's there for. Certainly, it needs to be modernized and upgraded, and that could be one of those things that he was referring to, and maybe was even misspoke or was misunderstood. There's a hundreds of billions of dollar effort to modernize the nuclear triad.
Right. Well, back to the president's tax reform rally on Wednesday. He didn't offer many specifics. When do you think we'll learn more from the administration about what it wants to see with tax reform?
I don't think we're going to hear a lot from the White House beyond what they've already said, beyond the president going out on the campaign trail. They've sort of handed this back off to Congress. And that was, sort of the interesting pattern here. We've seen it on things like immigration, too, on health care, certainly, where the White House will release some sort of outline of what it wants, a bullet-pointed list, something that can really easily fit on one page, and then go to lawmakers in Congress and say, you do the hard work of trying to get something that can pass. The problem is that lawmakers on Capitol Hill are wary of taking the risk there, proposing something that maybe the president won't sign, that the president will criticize, like the president criticized various drafts of health care legislation over the past 9 months in office. So, and also, by not having the president intimately involved from the get-go, it does deny sort of him the ability to sort of shape how it ends up and make it something that, from his perspective, might be easier to sell the American people.
Well, Republicans can only afford to lose 2 votes on tax reform. Is the White House worried about getting senators on board for this legislation, especially after his recent feud with Senator Bob Corker?
They absolutely are. At the same time, it's sort of where that ranks on the White House's list of problems seems to be kind of low. They haven't even focused on getting to that 50 votes yet, it seems. We're not seeing an organized effort of the president bringing people in. Others in the administration are, but the president still seems a bit more interested at the moment in fighting these other sort of sideshow battles, whether it be with Bob Corker, John McCain, others in the Senate. And that seems to be an interesting strategy from the president, while others, whether it be Ivanka Trump and others in the White House, are trying to wine and dine lawmakers, meet with them, and get involved in the process of drafting and developing a coalition around tax reform. The president is sort of tweeting and giving speeches from afar, but is not intimately involved in trying to win over the simple majority that they need.
Meantime, former President Barack Obama is making his first post-presidential campaign appearance next Thursday. He'll be campaigning for Democratic gubernatorial candidate Ralph Northam in Virginia. Zeke, out of all the high-profile races this year, why would former President Obama pick this one as his public re-entry into politics?
I think there are two components there. Number one is that the president was obviously supportive of Northam's rival, Tom Perriello, who served in the Obama administration, was seen as more of the progressive person in the Democratic primary earlier this year. By supporting Northam, it's sort of is an indication that the Democratic Party needs to come together. Certainly there's some intra-party rivalry between sort of the Bernie wing, the Hillary Clinton wing, still sort of the progressives and the moderates within the Democratic Party. This is a signal that the president can sort of that the former president can sort of try to bring everyone together for the fall. And then also Virginia is one of the only races this year, but also one of the most promising for Democrats. It's maintaining the democratically held seat right now that Governor McAuliffe holds, but also that's where Republicans are investing a lot, hoping for another pickup in the gubernatorial race, and it's going to have a national implication. It sort of is the trial ground, the testing ground for what will be the very busy 2018 cycle. So we're seeing messages being tested out there. So former President Obama going there is an indication of sort of how important it is for Democrats to win that race and hold that seat.
Well, let me ask you about the Republican side. Vice President Mike Pence is campaigning for the Republican Ed Gillespie in this race on Saturday. How important is this race to the White House?
Absolutely, it is critical for them because it's going to be viewed through a national context. I mean, obviously, Virginia is just outside. Parts of it are in the Washington, D.C. Beltway, so there's a proximity element. You can't turn on television in the Washington area without seeing ads in that race. So the president is viewing the ads in that race, and a lot of them are about him. Certainly, so there is that component, but also it's going to be viewed as a referendum on President Trump, just because he's the head of the Republican Party. So that's going to be something he's going to wake up to the day after Election Day, no matter what. So for the White House, they need to get involved early on to try to help Ed Gillespie get across the finish line. That's going to be an uphill battle. All the surveys point to that right now, and certainly given the demographics in Virginia has been trending blue increasingly over the last decade or so. It's going to be very hard to get them there, but they have no choice but to invest all in.
Do you think that the Virginia race is all the more important given what happened in Alabama, where the candidate who President Trump actually backed lost, Senator Luther Strange?
There's certainly an element of that where we're seeing does the president's political juice extend to people who aren't him, and increasingly evidence is maybe not. All at the same time that we talked just now about President Obama, where he also didn't have a huge effect down ballot. So maybe we're seeing now presidents who are personalities in their own right, not viewed from a partisan framework, so they don't really help their party candidates down ballot, but they are they help them. When they're running on the ticket, they can boost Republicans on sort of behind them, but they're not going to be useful in an off year if they're not on the ballot themselves.
Yeah, that's kind of a change, right, Zeke? In the past, you'd have the president swoop in, and you were guaranteed that there would be a boost for that candidate.
Yeah, and the fact in Alabama, it seems, according to some surveys, there maybe was even a little bit of a cost to the president. Alabama maybe wasn't necessarily a nationalized election. Virginia is an example of what will be a national election in 2018. It's sort of the kickoff in a way to the 2018 midterm cycle, and that's certainly going to be a nationalized race where the president, needs to be able to go and help some of the vulnerable Republicans, whether in the House or the Senate, because otherwise he's at risk of losing his majorities, or at least seeing those majorities curtailed. And in a certain, particularly in the House, even if they were to hold the majority, but only hold that majority by a handful of seats, that's in a way almost worse than losing it outright for the president. So they have all sorts of problems that require message testing, getting the president to find a way to help people down ballot. And his poll numbers right now are a challenge for him, and his reputation around the country is something that he's going to have to work on by next year, certainly.
Right. High stakes. We'll be watching closely. Zeke Miller, thanks so much, Zeke.
Thank you.